Good evening and welcome to ASIPP webinar series, Modernizing Your Practice Through Medical Technology. Tonight's topic is remote therapeutic monitoring.
That's great. And thank you for that introduction. I think we're really looking forward to this this whole series. Also, shout out to Dr. Ryan Budwani and Dr. Kiran Patel, who's been working really hard on these webinars as well. I will now, in the interest of time, turn over to Ryan briefly, who will then turn it over to Dan. So Ryan, do you have a few words you wanted to say?
Absolutely. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for this incredible opportunity to join you guys this evening. We have a wonderful group of panelists. We're going to start off with Dan Cohen from Adhere Plus. This is a game-changing company in RTM, and Dan himself is really a legend in this field, and we could do an entire webinar on him. So I'm going to give him the time to introduce himself and really the goals of this company and how it can better help serve our patients in the near term and in the long term. So with that, Dan, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that introduction, and that's definitely a hard one to live up to. Hopefully you all can see my screen.
Yeah, we see it perfectly and we hear you well too.
Excellent. As Ryan said, I'm Dan Cohen. I've been involved in healthcare for 26 years in drug and device development primarily, in pain management throughout that time period. In the pain management field, I'm mostly known for my involvement in the development and approvals of abuse-resistant, tamper-resistant opioid products. In addition to that, I've spent over 45 years in public policy in the Congress and the executive agencies of the government dealing with healthcare and other issues over that time. But today, we're going to talk about RTM. And as clinicians, I know you've had that moment. Seeing a patient weeks after a visit and realizing that progress wasn't what you expected. You adjust treatment, re-educate, you try and close the gaps. But between appointments where 90% of patient treatment really happens, there's just so much you don't see. So today, I'll share how remote therapeutic monitoring, or RTM, is transforming pain practices across the country, turning risk into revenue, turning compliance into connection, and most importantly, turning data into insight. I want you to see how RTM isn't extra work. It's better work. So let's start with the problem we're solving. Pain practices face a triple threat: tighter oversight, heavier administrative burden, and patients whose signs and symptoms disappear from your view between E&M visits. What we lose isn't just time, it's data, connection, and revenue. Every unanswered call or untracked symptom is a missed opportunity for clinical and even financial performance. RTM bridges these gaps by providing continuous insight into patient adherence, function, and progress between visits. It transforms reactive care into proactive care, empowering you to intervene early before minor issues become setbacks. This technology isn't replacing your clinical judgment, it's extending it. In modern medicine, data is currency. Every patient message, symptom check, and functional update tells a story, but unless it's structured, it's lost. Adhere captures these daily signals and translates them into clinical and financial intelligence you can act on, and ultimately even bill for. So here enters remote therapeutic monitoring. It's a brand new category of care. An ideal RTM platform should look and feel like a natural extension of your clinical workflow, not an added task. It gives providers daily structured check-ins, symptoms, function, medication use, care plan adherence, all between visits. For RTM to succeed, 3 pillars must be in place: adherence, communication, and documentation. RTM is the bridge between visits. It allows you to monitor patient recovery, adherence, and function, all remotely, while generating new revenue using AMA, CPT, and CMS-approved reimbursement codes. It's how we make the invisible 90% of patient care visible and valuable. Now, I have an unfair advantage. Not all RTM platforms are equal, and understanding the differences is vital. Many vendors took old RPM systems and slapped an RTM label on top. Adhere Plus was built from the ground up for therapeutic monitoring. Our ARC framework, automated, audit-ready compliance, ensures that every interaction is automatically captured and documented. Every interaction is compliant and defensible. We deliver specialty specific protocols for pain, opioid adherence, interventional treatments, neuromodulation, functional outcomes. And with our patient language engine, we even engage Spanish-speaking patients with the same fidelity. Real connection, no translation gap. We didn't retrofit RTM, we engineered it. Adhere Plus isn't a bolt-on RPM tool. It's the first platform built specifically for therapeutic monitoring. We made engagement personal, multilingual, and measurable. When designed well, we're able to take non-billable chaos and turn it into structured, reimbursable workflow. The AMA CPT codes are designed to reimburse monitoring and management work between visits. They're designed to recognize the real labor of proactive care. Practices using Adhere Plus have cut call volume by double digits, freed up staff time, and generated steady monthly RTM revenue. We are live in paying practices across the country, practices who have been reimbursed by over 98 commercial payers. That number's growing weekly. None of this is theory. This is real, it's reoccurring cash flow. With Adhere Plus, every patient interaction becomes a reimbursable touchpoint. We transform your existing work, phone calls, med checks, symptom tracking, into structured, compliant data that drives CPT billing and reoccurring revenue. But let me be very clear, this isn't just about money. With Adhere Plus RTM, compliance becomes connection. With daily touch points, patients feel supported, like a concierge practice without the cost. Providers see early warnings, side effects, missed medications, declining function. When you think about an RTM solution, evaluate it. Apply the same rigor you would to any clinical interaction. Ask, is it customizable to my specialty? Does it integrate seamlessly into my workflow? Does it reduce staff burden? Is there published evidence? Even what's the ROI? A high-performing platform should improve clinical efficiency while supporting measurable outcomes. Our data speaks for itself. 77 to 89% sustained engagement in real-world clinical interactions across all of our clinics. RTM strengthens the human side of medicine while protecting the business side. Our partners see the difference every day. RTM isn't abstract. It makes practice life better and patient care stronger. Clinically validated RTM platforms, like Adhere Plus, offer much more than data collection. They deliver actionable intelligence through real-time dashboards, automated triage, and compliant-ready documentation. Don't need to just take my word for it. One of our physicians said, Adhere Plus makes my practice more efficient and lets me focus on what really matters. Another added, RTM feels more personal than any patient portal. My patients actually engage. And think about it. When compliance feels like care, that's when you know you've changed the game. The future of pain management will be data-driven, value-based, and transparent. The telehealth market's exploding. Most all major commercial payers are covering, and CMS is backing, even pushing RTM nationally. The central message, RTM is not just another digital initiative. It is a clinical standard in the making. At Adhere Plus, We have already collected over 3.7 million electronic patient-reported outcomes, ePROs, and we add 250,000 more data points every month. We are the first and the only platform that's RTM first, chronic care focused, and clinically validated across multiple specialties. This RTM data didn't just improve individual care, it's used to help shape public policy, define quality measures, strengthen policymakers' understandings of interventional pain, for example, as a specialty. Adhere Plus is proud to be part of that conversation with policymakers, payers, and providers alike. So this is your invitation. RTM isn't tomorrow's idea, it's today's opportunity. And my bottom line, RTM is here, and practices that adopt early win big. RTM isn't about replacing the clinician's role, it's about amplifying it. It gives eyes on the moments we used to miss, and it gives patients a sense of partnership in their care. At Adhere Plus, we make it easy, compliant, and profitable. And ultimately, that's why we're here, to help patients feel seen, supported, successful, every day, not just every visit. So let's connect. Let's work together and create a partnership between ASIPP and Adhere. Working together, we can add to the work that ASIPP has led for interventional pain, and your practice can be part of the national model for compliant, data-driven care. Scan the QR code, connect with us, and let's partner in shaping what's next. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you later as the program progresses.
Thank you for that excellent presentation. And it certainly generated a lot of questions in the chat. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we're going to be doing our Q&A at the end of the presentation. So, Dan, please stick around because I think there's going to be a lot of questions for you. And we will now move on to the next speaker, which is Biotronic. And they're going to be talking about remote patient monitoring. And Ashley is going to be doing that. So you see the slide introducing Ashley there, and I will turn over the microphone to Ashley.
Ashley, you are muted.
There we go. How are we now?
Good.
Great. Well, I was just saying that I'm really pleased to be here today especially with these other panelists to talk something about what we're all obviously very passionate about is improving patient outcomes, driving efficiencies with your practice, and really helping this place take shape in this industry, the chronic pain. Where we're coming from is remote patient monitoring platform for patients specifically implanted with spinal cord stimulators. So this is able to fill, I think, a huge gap that we all recognize in the industry up to date. There's a lot of terms that we throw around a lot. Remote patient monitoring, remote physiologic monitoring, remote therapeutic monitoring, remote programming, remote patient monitoring, and it can make the space feel a little bit confusing and maybe hesitant that you want to dip your toe into it. But hopefully we can provide amongst myself and the other panelists here today about what that is and confident how you can maybe incorporate it in your practice should it make sense. So from the SCS perspective, I want to just talk about how this takes place and where it has context for spinal cord stimulators. So we're all pretty familiar with the standard of care for patients implanted with this device. A patient has a device issue. It's a pretty sophisticated device. And a lot of our support on the patient is focused on getting the patient to implant, not a ton of support focused on the patient after implant. So the patient has a device issue. They may accidentally turn it off. This is especially common with patients utilizing a sub-therapeutic or a sub-perception therapeutic waveform, and the pain returns. right? We know that that can happen as soon as a day for that therapy to wash out. And anywhere from 1 to 7 days, typically for a patient, once they identify that they have a problem, the onus is on the patient to raise their hand and say, hey, I need help. And from that time, up to 7 days before they can set an appointment with either the industry rep or your practice to get seen. So at that point, either the rep or someone in your office can re-educate the patient, or maybe the industry representative reprograms the patient at that point, needed to actually restore that pain relief. But the resolution time is anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. And I think that's being pretty generous in most cases, where it could be months before the patient realized that their waveform was actually off in the background. So where we've come in and how we've leveraged our technology to collect data from our patient devices really gives us a leg up on how we can intervene and shorten this window to get the patient back to therapy, or hopefully get in front of ever preventing a therapy loss. So a patient has a device issue, it's turned off accidentally, they turn it down below to maybe where it's effective, they're having difficulties charging, whatever the case is. We have data that we're collecting directly from the patient's device that allows us to know that through proactive care triggers, which I'll talk about here in a second of how that works. But the idea is we get a hold of that information is organized into a report where we can actually proactively reach out to the patient and correct the issue before it becomes a problem. With this type of care, we've been able to prevent pain from exacerbating. We know how hard, once a patient loses their therapy, it can cause a patient to kind of have this downward spiral of how they perceive confidence in their device and what their therapy can do with them. It can take a long time to get them back into a good headspace. So by getting in front of it, one, the patients feel really cared for. We have an opportunity, whatever the reasons the device was off, whether it was intentional or unintentional, to get ahead of it, do an on-demand remote programming, which is part of our platform, and really make sure that the patient is supported and prevent unnecessary visits into your clinic that can be more efficiently and more quickly handled remotely. These are proactive care triggers and serve as a basis for our remote patient management. So this is part of our proactive care platform and really is focused on patients' number one, therapy compliance. So making sure they have it on and that they're using it as prescribed. The second part of it is making sure that they're comfortable with the technical piece of it, right? Which is charging the device and making sure that they understand how to use their patient remote to adjust therapy if needed. And the last piece of it is the active electrode out of range. And that speaks to just monitoring the system integrity. So if we can get far above and ahead of potential issues with the implanted system, ensuring that the device and all of its components are functioning correctly to maintain the optimal therapy. This is the least activated trigger of all of our proactive care triggers. The number one activated trigger is low device usage. And so we've been able to intervene over 9,000 times this year of patients that have needed support with turning their therapy back on or intervening and providing additional education with their therapy at some point. It's followed by charging compliance, which is most likely or most often activated within the first 90 days of implant as a patient is getting used to this new system. And then far below is that therapeutic window and, of course, active electrode out of range, which really speaks to, I think, the robustness of both the therapy and the device itself. Over 80% of our total call volume is outbound, whether that's SMS or a phone call to the patient, really reflecting the proactive care nature of this program. Now, what makes this program really work and what is going to enable when I talk about remote therapeutic monitoring service that we offer is this automatic and passive data capture. So we're not asking the patient to do anything much different than what you're already doing with your smartphone device, which is keeping it plugged in and connected to Wi-Fi or within cellular range. All of our patients get a 5G cellular connection that comes with their patient remote. And we have the ability to monitor these patients both during their trial, and remote program during their trial, which is great because I think it's an extra set of insurance policy to make sure your patient has every opportunity at success with their therapy at this one short window of time that they have to make sure that it's an appropriate therapy for them. So it gives the patient more confidence, can give you more confidence that the device is working as intended. So whether it's the EPG during the trial or the IPG, if the patient is permanently implanted, that is all sent to their patient remote through a Bluetooth connection. That is sent in the middle of the night to our health cloud system. And with this daily automatic passive data capture, we're collecting anywhere from 150 points to 250 data points per day. And that all gets organized, right? All of that is great. Not all of it is always relevant, or not all of it is always useful. That's why we put it through the lens of our 5 proactive care triggers so that data is actionable and is actually helpful to the patient in preventing issues becoming problems. So with that daily report that my team manages, they are proactively outreaching to the patient to provide additional education, additional touch point, and actually just the ability for us to check in on the patient and see how they're doing really lends a lot of extra benefit to their care and how they perceive their care. Where this lends us, because of this automatic daily capture, really allows us to offer remote therapeutic monitoring services. They fall into 2 buckets. One is a report only, and 2 is our BioVantage service, which I'll talk about here in the next few slides. So BioVantage is a remote therapeutic monitoring service that's specifically tailored for patients with these stimulators. Through this service, we're tracking pain scores, progress towards goals, monitoring objective data, including their device usage and charging behavior, how often they've interacted with their programmer, how often they've changed their programs, what modalities they're using, whether that's our sub-perception waveform resonance or traditional standard tonic. And we really use these insights to proactively gauge the patient. So in addition to these proactive care touch points that the patient may receive throughout the course of the month, it also layers in a monthly touch point where it's specifically focused on the patient. Because we know that compliant patients doesn't always mean they're getting therapeutic relief. And so these monthly touch points gives us an extra opportunity to touch base with them and make sure that they are progressing towards the goals that you've established and outlined for them. Through the context of this program, we're providing all the necessary reports to support the RTM CPT codes for reimbursement and audit readiness. And these monthly structured patient touch points review all the progress towards goals and also combine objective with subjective data. And these meet all of the RTM code requirements. And so this next slide shows all of the reports to meet these code requirements. So again, if you're interested in the report only service, we provide this RTM report so you can have those interactions with those patients monthly, or we can go ahead and take care of the interaction portion with those monthly touch points. And that is the BioVantage monitoring report that satisfies that interaction that must take place every month. So this really is a slide that represents our total remote patient management. I just want to distinguish between these 2 things. Again, proactive care is something that every patient gets for free. Every patient gets a level of remote patient management and the opportunity to intervene before issues become problems. Right? It's proactive. It's not incumbent on the patient to raise their hand. And we have a very high compliance with this platform. Over 96% of our patient population is enrolled and consents to our remote therapeutic remote monitoring. And then BioVantage is an additional add-on service, right, for that. So it really streamlines it for your office to, and you as the clinician to set specific treatment plan for your patient, and for us to keep you engaged and give you a ton of information of how that patient is doing month by month. And also the ability for you to seek reimbursement for your time spent reviewing that plan and information. This really has an opportunity to expand patient support. Like, these patients with these devices really haven't had an opportunity to experience yet. So these monthly patient check-ins, from my experience with these patients, it really layers a level of confidence in their therapy. They tend to be way more compliant, and it builds overall trust each and every month by reinforcing education, expectations, and providing really timely support. So like my colleague said, from here, it really has this concierge type feel with the patients that I think, especially with spinal cord stimulators and getting them on the right foot, is so important and so valuable. So each month, our Embrace Care team member is going to reach out to your patient. They're going to check in on and review how they've utilized their device throughout the course of the month, see if there's any questions. Patients tend to really look forward to this call. They look forward to speaking with their personal EC team member. And after each session, the Embrace Care team sends a detailed report that's uploaded directly into our portals so that your staff can adjust and you as a clinician can adjust the care plan as needed to keep patients on track so they have every chance at therapy success. So there's a lot of documentation. We can really make sure the device is working as intended, like first thing, just making sure the patient is meeting their treatment goals. There's a lot that we just offer in terms of information with just our proactive care platform. So one is a patient interaction log, and this is all viewable from our provider portal. Every touch point with the patient versus from when the time of identification for the patient, when they've been educated, if you choose to utilize our prior services authorization, then you can check on when that's been submitted and tracking the progress towards that. Every single time a remote programming has been done, every single time we've identified and reached out to a patient about a proactive care trigger that has been resolved, and every conversation is detailed and a synopsis of that conversation in this interaction log. We also have a trial summary report that shows and tracks the experience that the patient had during their trial. Every single programming session report, whether it's done remotely or in office, is documented so that you know that that's happened and what was done with the patient at that point in time. Our remote programming sessions are extremely efficient and very fast. Our average remote programming session is 5 minutes. The average call for my team that I can track for all of our remote programming sessions is about 11 minutes. So it's extremely fast, extremely efficient, and really convenient for the patient, saving a lot of time from having them have to drive into your clinic to get a quick programming session. And then finally, the patient progress report, which allows you, even just for your implanted patients that may not participate in a remote therapeutic monitoring platform, the ability to get both objective and subjective information which is an on-demand access for you from your portal. And then finally, for our 2 remote therapeutic monitoring services, we have the option of report only, allowing you to take care of that interaction with the patient, or the BioVantage report, which we go ahead and take care of the monthly patient calls in that regard. Again, this is how these 2 platforms really stack up to what we've been traditionally been able to offer in the space for implanted spinal cord stimulation patients. It's been really a pleasure to be a part of developing this platform. I myself was a former clinical specialist and territory manager for over 5 years in this space. And so this has been a huge passion project, both of mine and all my colleagues at Biotronic, really to develop something that serves the needs that we saw as a huge gap in the space, and a huge big step forward in terms of improving outcomes and providing some additional efficiencies to you in your practice. So this is all enabled again by our proprietary remote monitoring technology. Embrace One Proactive Care and BioVantage is really the only commercially available service for SCS patients that provides this built-in touchpoint system. So, and it all is predicated on this automatic objective daily monitoring. And with that, I just thank you so much. And if you'd like to hear more info or reach out and are interested in a rep with your area, we have this website that you can peruse, and I can put that in the chat as well.
Thank you, Ashley, for that wonderful presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to my friend from Sarah Health, Tom, who's going to really talk about the strategy, his company is using to really embrace RTM and how they're engaging patients. So Tom, I'm going to let you do a brief intro of yourself, and then we'll go through with the slides. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Budwani. And thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this. We're really honored to be here and presenting to y'all. And really, my background is sales and growth. Let's keep it simple. And let's jump into the actual product, what we're all here to talk about, and we'll kind of get going here. So let me share my screen. And if you'll bear with me. Maybe. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I am with Sarah Health, and we have been doing remote therapeutic monitoring. We joke internally that we've been doing remote therapeutic monitoring since before it was cool. We've been around as a company since 2018 and working really in the with first responders, firefighters, healthcare, kind of healthcare adjacent, but not the fee for service world. And when the codes came out in 2022, we were really well positioned to have a unique offering for this space. And what we learned as we have kind of worked our way through the last few years is that, especially when it comes to the interventional pain world, it is so important that you can add remote care to your practice without burdening your staff. And so that's why you see two logos on the screen, is because we learned that the best way that we could best serve this population is by partnering with a remote care company in Ezra Health that offers kind of the full suite of staff extension for your team. So we're going to talk about this a little differently. But first, I want to give you quite kind of a quick rundown of what is this, why would we talk about these together, how does this make sense? And then we'll dive in a little deeper on RTM. So with chronic care management and remote therapeutic monitoring, these both came about to save CMS money. I mean, let's be honest, that was the goal, is how do we avoid the rehospitalizations and the readmittance and the costs associated with that when they're already seeing so many providers that can offer them the care that they need without them going to the emergency room. And that's the goal here. And so with combining these two programs into one as a turnkey solution for your practice, it really helps you to ensure that patients are staying connected to their care between visits. I mean, you get to see the patient for such a small fraction of time that most of their life is happening when they're not in front of you. You need a lot of that information to make the best clinical decisions, and that's where these tools can come in and really work for you. And that's where the power of the program comes. So I'm not going to bore you with CPT codes, but I do want to talk to you about some expansions of these codes, because we got a final fee schedule released just recently showing that we will get 2 new RTM codes next year, starting January 1. And that gives us a lot more flexibility to make sure that we're serving patients well and meeting them where they're at without ever annoying the patient. And that's a fine line to balance, but I think it's really important because we need to gather the information in a timely fashion from the patient, making sure that it can actually be reimbursed, right? Because your staff has costs associated with it. But it's most important that we get the care to the patient in a timely fashion. And this allows you to do that. And these programs are expanding. So let's dive in a little deeper to the remote therapeutic monitoring side. What we do at Sarah Health is we offer a no-tech or low-tech solution to RTM. What I mean by that is all of our prompts are delivered via SMS text. And what this does is this allows us to have daily check-ins with patients where they can answer a simple question, pre-procedure, post-procedure, getting you the information when you need it and not burdening your staff with another phone call or another being able to meet with the patient or call the patient. Those can take a lot of time, but a text you can get through very, very quickly, both from the patient's perspective. When you look at how these questions are structured, They're simple. We're going to ask a single question with a set range of responses. Obviously, it's free text. The patient can respond with anything that they've got, but we try to steer them towards the meaningful information that you're looking for. All of this is fully customizable, and we'll get to that here in a second, but all of this information can be customized to your specific patients and delivered really at whatever cadence is appropriate. So right now, because of the rules and regs with RTM, we deliver these on a daily basis to the patient, especially leading into or coming out of a procedure. But as we move into next year, we're going to be able to be a lot more flexible with the cadence of these messages, ensuring that it's simple for the patient and you're getting the information that you need when you need it. So the other thing is we need to make sure that we're using that information, right? So as our platform collects more information from the patient, we're able to use that information along with some of the other information available to make the output more specific to the patient. So now instead of generic messages that have a tendency to come off a little bit dry, now they start to be more robust, and we're able to ask the questions specifically that are pertinent to that patient's life. This is where we can individualize healthcare back down to the patient level. And that is where this is going. That's what this is allowing you to do. And with the solution that we're bringing to the table, the key here is that now you're able to do that without adding. I believe both other presenters say this can't be one more thing. And that is so correct. I could not agree more. This can't be another burden on your staff because they've got a lot on their plate already. You're all very, very busy. And if this is one more thing, then it has a high likelihood of not being successful. And so we've got to make sure that this is really clinically valuable for the provider, that it's not a burden on the staff, and that it's impactful for the patient. And so with the information that we have available, now we're able to structure the information offered from the patient into more specific questions back to them as we work through their care journey. And that individualization is something that is very unique to the patient. And it's also valuable for the provider to be able to see that information as it comes back. So let's talk structurally how this works. The reason why we are showing this as a combined solution is because all of these care management activities are necessary at different times for your patients. And your team probably doesn't have time to handle all of this. And that's where we really lean on Ezrin and their care coordinators to be able to manage this for your patients as an extension of your practice. So this is everything from finding the right community program to help get your patient to and from their visit. Medication refills. Walgreens that you usually go to is out of the meds that we're looking for you. So we're going to have to send you to CVS this time. But all of this is currently falling on your team. And we can now offsource that into this care management program that is going to be really, really impactful for the patient and really, really helpful for your practice. So when we look at kind of what we're trying to accomplish and the benefits of these programs, it's so important that patients know that they're cared for. The more touch points that we have with that patient between visits will really dictate and help push the patient towards the positive outcomes that they're looking for. We need to make sure that we're managing that for the patient in a meaningful way so that they can actually get the care that they need when they need it, but that they can also be assured along the way that they're making the progress that they're supposed to be making. Patients know how they want to feel, but they're not exactly sure the process on how to get there. And with these daily touch points, with Ezrin checking in with them on a monthly cadence and making sure that they're having at least 2 or 3 phone calls with them, now you're able to really offer a level of care to the patient that is far and above what your schedule or most people's schedule would allow. It's also going to cut down on the hospital visits, especially on those ER visits, and it's really going to make a nice impact to your revenue as well. The way that we roll this program out as we come and work with practices is, first and foremost, we've got to make sure that it's structured as a partnership. The only way that we will ever make $1 from you is if you generate revenue. And we find that to be the best way to roll these programs out. And so the first thing we've got to do is we've got to talk to you and your team. What are the protocols that you could that we could utilize care management for? How could we roll that out? What could that look like? We need to make sure that we understand and are part of the workflow that you've got, all the way down to we're going to be documenting in your EMR so that you're not having to look at multiple different screens when you're trying to use this information. Everything will be in front of the provider when they're inside the patient's chart, and your team did not have to put any of it in there. And that's the big differentiator, is we're actually simplifying the care management. We're giving time back to you and your team, as well as an additional revenue stream. This also helps from the compliance standpoint, because that's a huge component of this, especially as these programs expand and more people are utilizing them. There's going to be more of a lens on these codes, how they're utilized, were they properly utilized? And that's where having the Sarah and Ezrin team as your backer is really a safety net, because we're ensuring that all of the compliance standards are met, all of the engagement thresholds are met, and that you have everything documented in the exact form and fashion necessary to ensure that you're not only getting paid for the work that's being done, but you're also ensuring that you're compliant with all the rules and regs. We can handle all the way up to and through billing. We have automated billing solutions. We can leverage your team and RCM to bill those codes. All of these options get discussed as we're rolling this out. And throughout this whole process, the goal of this is, how do we make sure to serve your patients as best possible and make sure that they're getting what they need from the services that you're offering them, allowing you to stay focused on their care and allowing us to handle everything else that happens outside of the clinic, so that you are generating the revenue you need, patients are getting the care that they need, and the process is working the way that it should. Now, I know this is not the intent of this, but I would like to show you a little bit of how I like to be transparent with this and just show you what could this look like for your practice. And so we just did a simple pro forma here from the data that we've collected. We tried to be as conservative as possible with this, but assuming that you've got this 1,000 patients and with a 30 to 60% eligibility, which should be low. Medicare Advantage should be reimbursing for these codes, as well as more and more commercial payers are coming on board. But we like to set this up where the reimbursement from the patient for the 34 minutes of time necessary and the RTM codes comes out to about $95 per patient, which can make a really meaningful impact to your practice on both the monthly and annual level. But the key here is that we didn't lose sight of the fact that the most important part of this is your patients getting the care that they need when they need it. And that is the power of care management. And when you combine this into a single solution for your practice, now you're able to leverage the touch points throughout the month, as well as those daily touch points, to make sure that patients feel more cared for than they ever have before. So I went pretty fast, that happens, but I actually enjoy the Q&A portion quite a bit. So I want to make sure that I put my contact information up here. This is the way that you can get more information about our combined solution and how this can actually come to life in your practice. But Dr. Budwani, I will hand it back to you, and we can go to the next steps.
All right, thank you, Tom, and thank you everyone for really joining us tonight. Excellent presentations. So I'm going to ask really a broad question, and I want Dan to actually begin with answering this. Where do you see really the role of artificial intelligence expanding into each of these platforms? Streamlining some of these services, and then really empowering not just the technology, but the patient and then the physician, and really implying and implementing these technologies in their process. Because I feel like we're going to see a lot of these changes over the next 6 months, 18 months, and 24 months. And what is your company doing at the moment? And each of you guys can answer this to the best of your ability, because you can't really predict what's going to happen in about 24 months. But where do you see your company keeping up with the technology ahead? Thank you.
I appreciate that, Ryan. Right now, our platform generates a clinical protocol that provides patients with 3 clinical questions on a daily basis. The questions change every day. They rotate based on the disease state, the treatment protocols, and the physician's preference. Right now, that's a machine learning exercise, and we're working on transitioning that to an AI approach, which we anticipate that we will be able to offer by the third quarter. With that, the AI will use predictive responses from the patient to generate the type of clinical protocols. We also are exploring something very similar to what you're doing, Ryan, with avatars particularly for patients that have inability to read effectively or respond on a smartphone, where the physician will actually ask the questions that go onto the clinical basis. We still capture and track and trend everything for the practice, but that clinical data that we are developing, that bolus, is a perfect tool for outcomes data. We're collecting an enormous amount of ePROS data that is giving real-time outcomes, and we're able to compare those outcomes by patient segment, their diagnosis, their clinical indicators, and where they're located around the country, which has enormous value for both payers and treatment protocols, and ultimately for someone like me that was used to do drug and device development, having that type of tool and information, and even challenging perhaps CRO development of clinical trials.
No, that's incredible. I mean, it's so exciting to see now how we're going to be able to actually monitor this and implement this with just really the technology giving us access like never before. So with that, Tom, you guys are kind of working on, different version of a similar implementation. How do you see you all, adapting this type of technology, especially with the rapid advance in AI?
Yeah, I mean, what we've found is that partnering with groups like OnDoc for delivering patient education, where that provider avatar is actually delivering the content to the patient, makes such a huge impact. And then what we talked a little bit about during the presentation was how are we actually using the information offered from the patient to ask better next questions of the patient so that the provider's getting the information that they need. And it's structured in a way where it still is consistent for the patient so that it doesn't feel different. It feels like an extension of care, which is where, to your larger question of where do I see this going? As we learn how to use the information available to us, which there is a lot of information available, it really comes down to how can we use all of that to make sure that the individualized care model comes through to the patient. Every patient has different characteristics, symptom trends, ways that they're being affected by their pain. And we need to make sure that we are understanding, not broadly, but individually how they're affected. And so we need to make sure that we're asking the better next question to get the information that we need from the patient so that they can get the care that they need from you. So that's where I see this going, is just really individualizing care for those providers that are able to utilize the technology.
Incredible. Thank you so much for that information. So Ashley, spinal cord stimulation is a technology near and dear to my heart, along with a lot of the folks on, this talk tonight. And really at the heart of it is really patient and outcomes. And I feel like RTM is really the soul of the technology, because where we've struggled over the past, years in getting the best potential outcomes is figuring out, how does this technology impact our patients on a daily basis, minute by minute, essentially. So you guys are one of the first really in the industry to implement this, and really I commend you for that. How do you see the current and the recent data that's coming in showing that implementation? And then how do you think it's going to impact really converting those patients from trial to actually, the full stimulator package that you all offer?
Yeah, those are great questions, and you're right. We're really kind of the first attempt to fill this gap, and we have collected a lot of data, and we've learned a lot since, really, I mean, we're pioneering this and blazing and cutting our own trails and learning and reiterating always. So the first of like getting the patient from trial to implant, I think the remote monitoring during the trial is really key. And so several of you who are familiar with, spinal cord stimulation, I mean, how many times have you had a patient show up on the day of the lead pull and their device was off, right? Whether they had good outcomes or bad outcomes, there's no ability to really make sure that they actually had it on the entire time and that they were using it as appropriately. So of course our reps are checking in with the patient every single day, but even with that, there's some barriers to make sure you're not actually catching everything. If the patient is doing well, right? There's not a need for them to double check their patient remote and make sure the therapy is on. So I've certainly been victim of that several times, both in trial and an implant with patients in my past. And so remote monitoring during the trial period is, I think, key because in addition to the rep calling every day, like I said, my remote care team, the Embrace Care team, is checking in there in the back end to make sure, one, they don't turn it down below to where it's useful, that they have it on, and that there's nothing affecting the programming like an electrode that's out of range. So there's that, and then dovetail that with the ability to remote program. You really expand your opportunity to engage the patient during the trial period and respond extremely quickly to make sure that they don't get out of a therapeutic window, so they have every success at that chance of that trial. So I see that really improving. That getting from a patient to trial to implant with just a ton more confidence. And then from like all the data that we've collected and where it's going, I think I agree with my colleagues that it's, we're collecting a lot of data. And for these spinal cord stimulation patients, just like any chronic pain patients, none of them are created equal. Each of them are unique. Each of them are special in their own way. And this default approach to, even how we generate and activate proactive care triggers, I think deserves a thoughtful approach, leveraging machine learning and AI to create triggers that activate that's specific to a patient and how we profile them. So my team is already doing this on a manual basis, and understanding like what's really moving the needle forward for this patient is different than what will move the needle forward for a different patient. So really combining that to have this concept of dynamic trigger activation that we can really personalize and improve the outcomes for each and every patient. But what I think we've learned is that they need a lot of support, and they, like some of my other colleagues said, like really having these touch points improves their own confidence and their own feelings. Like a lot of patients do well during a trial, and a lot of patients do well during, every company's RTC, but real world outcomes haven't matched that and haven't stacked up to what we see during trials and RTC. So this proactive care and remote therapeutic monitoring services give that extra patient support that really, I think, ultimately are the best outcomes, and making sure that we're reiterating education and reiterating expectations.
Thank you. That was helpful. I know it's 7 o'clock, and we said the webinar would be about an hour, but I do want to do maybe some rapid fire questions. I've been doing a lot of these webinars for ASIPP. I don't think we've ever had this many questions in the Q&A. I think there's been 25 or so. I see Dan has answered several, but I'm going to go through some of these, maybe rapid fire style. And we'll go to Tom. The question is, how much do you all charge, and do you have virtual assistants offshore helping, or is it just texting?
So 60-40 split. So 40% comes back to the practice, 60% it goes to the program, and that's a fully managed care. Everything is, I need to make sure this is correct, but everything is onshore. And yes, I'm sorry, the last part of that question was,
Yeah, I think that's probably sufficient for
Perfect.
what they wanted. The next question is, Tom, love that you work in EMRs. Are you familiar with prognosis?
Heard of it, yes. Very familiar with it. I'm not familiar with it. Ezrin is very familiar with it, as they have a connection there. So yes.
Great. Tom, do you have references that you can share for other pain doctors that have used it? And will you work with current billers for billing?
yes and yes. So
Great.
happy to do that.
Yep. So we can interact, or we can let the attendees know that they can reach out to you for those
Absolutely.
things. That's great. And I will move on to Dan. Are there validated digital tools or metrics CMS recognizes for tracking progress in pain management patients?
CMS is really trying to develop their tools right now. There was a related question in the queue that I also answered, where someone said, "Is a patient just daily reporting their pain score sufficient?" And while technically that might meet the drafted mandate of the language, it's not sustainable, and you really need to get a full clinical picture of the patient. So for both CMS and for commercial payers that we've gone through compliance officer review, for example, they're looking at our platform that is a detailed clinical analysis with very short, brief interactions. You know, we patients get 3 clinical questions a day from us. Those questions change daily, but over a 30-day period, you're starting to develop some really deep clinical data of what's happening with the patient in between meetings. That's what the payers are looking for, whether it's public or private, especially in the RTM space, and that's the direction that the policymakers are going to. They really want to make sure that the information the physician gets has clinical validity to it and is not just a skimming of the surface. And the proof of that, I think, is UHC's limitation on RPM that they just announced in the last week, where they're going to limit it to very specific clinical situations, because the types of questions or the type of data that they were getting was limited to 6 different categories of Bluetooth-enabled, FDA-approved medical devices, which really doesn't work for most protocols. No one adopts it for pain, for example. And the data was too thin by having the same question essentially asked on a daily basis. There were only limited use cases where it made sense. And those of us in RTM are working really hard with the policymakers to make sure that we have broad data that is accessible. I mean, all of us that love data would love to ask a patient 30 questions a day, but you'd lose a patient pretty much after the first day if you tried to do that. So it has to be quick, it has to be simple, it has to be aggregatable, but it has to be meaningful.
Thank you. And Dan, here's another question, I suppose, for you. And I don't know if you know the answer to this, but are non-physician practitioners like PAs and Ps allowed to independently build CMS for RTM and pain management under general supervision?
I mean, the question touches a lot of points. RTM is considered an anytime code, so it can be used for any clinical situation that the supervising physician feels is necessary. And under general supervision, the physician that is providing that service is the one that bills. Anyone on the staff technically can provide the service as long as they're doing it under the general supervision of the physician. So a long answer of saying, if I understand the question correctly, the answer is yes.
Yeah, gotcha. And the final question that we have here for Ashley, to your knowledge, is it true that only one physician among many who care for a patient actually gets paid for RTM codes in a particular month? Essentially, if there are 3 different physicians from 3 different specialties caring for a patient, all 3 of them bill RTM codes, is only one of them going to get paid for that particular month?
Yeah, so my understanding is that only one physician can have a remote monitoring service at one time. So whether that's physiologic monitoring or therapeutic monitoring, the patient can only be enrolled in one service at a time. So if you have 3 that are billing for it in the same month, essentially only one person gets reimbursed. And that's
Thank
something
you.
that we make sure that we let everybody know up front in terms of enrolling the patient, that they're not enrolled in any other monitoring type service.
Thank you.
But as an adjunct to that, I'd end there. CCM and RTM can be billed jointly in a month. So there are value add services that you can go there as well.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. That's helpful. And as we conclude this webinar, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Karen Patel because she worked really, really hard at setting up this webinar as well. And I know that she had a patient care issue that prevented her from being able to moderate some of these talks, but just wanted to make sure that she was recognized for all of her hard work. And we're going to end the webinar now, but I have to say Ryan had to catch a flight, but with the miracle of AI, he's going to give the closing comments, and that will conclude the webinar after he's done, at least his AR avatar saying goodbye to all of us. Melinda, you can play the, I don't quite hear it. Well, don't quite hear it, but just so you know, it talks about getting involved in the initiatives that you see. There's a QR code for ASIPP to do some of these advocacy initiatives in AI, obviously working on patient safety, protecting physicians, and reimbursement policies, all the great stuff that ASIPP does. And that QR code allows you to join a registry or get more involved with ASIPP or our AI initiatives. And on that note, I just want to say thank you to everyone. So grateful for Dr. Manchakani for everything that he's done to build ASIPP, and Dr. Sanapati for leading us this year as president.
Thanks,
And thank you to all of our panelists. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.